Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, your co-host, Shaq. We're going to be talking UFC Vegas 9, Alistair Overeem versus Augusto Sakai, and Shaq, it's going down this Saturday night in Las Vegas, Nevada. Two heavyweights in the main event, and Alistair Overeem, 40 years old, but he doesn't want to retire without that UFC belt, and Augusto Sakai is quietly 4-0 in the UFC.
No, I think Augusto Sakai is one of the few guys from Contender Series to make it to a main event. I know Shabazian, I think, was the first one, I believe. And, he's got a tough test against the legend Overeem. I mean, Overeem's beating the who's who, JDS, Brock Lesnar, Mark Hunt. His last fight was crazy, actually, which is good. I mean, he actually came back from adversity. Usually, we see Reem get knocked out in spots like that. And, he was able to bounce back and get the win. And Sakai, maybe not necessarily the most exciting career so far. And I know he knocked out Tybura really fast, but I mean, he's gotten the job done in his 4 fights. So, at heavyweight, things can move fast.
Yeah, no doubt about it. One thing about Sakai is the guy goes out there and he wins fights, and he's very tough to look good against, and I feel like he's very underrated in the heavyweight division. But Overeem, always a tough out. Even if you beat Overeem, you're in for a serious fight, Shaq.
Yeah, man. Overeem's probably the most experienced heavyweight ever, man. I mean, he's got kickboxing fights, all these other world titles, not the UFC world title, but Strikeforce and Dream and all that. So, Overeem's done it, man. And it's interesting because sometimes I feel like some matchups kind of can seem a little too easy to him, and then he kind of like doesn't respect his opponent, and then he gets knocked out. But, man, his last fight was very impressive how he came back. So, and not to mention, I mean, I know a lot of people think I don't think that, but I know a lot of people think the Rosenstrike fight shouldn't have been stopped. So,
I mean, if it wouldn't have been stopped, he would have ate a couple brutal follow-ups. So I don't know what they're talking about. But, yeah, we'll get into Overeem and Sakai here in a sec. First, got to let the fans to make sure to go to bestfightpicks.com to tail our plays. And, Shaq, let's get right down to business, because first up in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Cole Smith, he's 7-1, and Hunter Azure is 8-1. Currently, they got Hunter Azure minus 225. The comeback on Cole Smith is plus 185. So you got the long body in Cole Smith, 6 foot tall for bantamweight. He wants to backpack you. And Hunter Azure, he's known for his wrestling. Interestingly enough, so I was actually mistaken last time I broke down a Hunter Azure fight. I said that he was a D1 wrestler. That's actually not true at all. Someone messaged me and let me know what the deal was, and I actually completely forget who it was because it was a while back. But they basically told me that, like, he had some kind of injury that prevented him from making the wrestling team or some shit. So he comes from a wrestling family, but he didn't actually wrestle in college. But anyways, they're matched up. He's got a good calf kick game. Who you got?
Yeah, man, I think this is a good fight because both guys took their first L their last fights, and they're hungry. Hunter Azure, he took that KO loss to Brian Kelleher, which is a pretty brutal KO loss. But we know Kelleher, man, to be fighting him in your second UFC fight, it is somewhat of a tough task. But I think it's because they slightly overrated Hunter Azure. I think he's a big, powerful guy, and I'm glad you brought up the injuries thing, because I heard that he had like 3 ACL surgeries, man. So damn. I actually kind of think Hunter Azure in general is a bit overrated, just due to the fact that, like, I've seen some fights of him on the local scene where he fought some, lesser competition and he got dropped a couple times. So that fight with Kelleher didn't really surprise me that much. And he's, like I said, the 3 ACL surgeries. So I think he's actually a guy, I'm not going to say that's closer towards the tail end, but I don't think, he's the prospect that this line would indicate. Now, I think Cole Smith is, he's a little one-dimensional. What he's going to try to do, he's going to try to get the takedown, try to get the back. But, man, Hunter Azure has not proved to me that, just for example, his fight with Brad Katona, he was able to get the win just due to the fact that he landed the harder shots when they were out on the feet. And that might very well happen in this spot, too. So I understand why he's the favorite. But man, a 2-1 favorite where you against a guy like Cole Smith, who, man, could easily back control him for around maybe even 7 to 8 minutes and hold on for, the last round and win a decision. I think there's some value on Cole Smith, man, and I'm actually taking him for the win. The Brad Katona fight, there was a long period of time where, man, he got pressed against the fence, and I feel like, man, if Cole Smith gets in spots like that, he will take that back of Hunter Azure and kill the clock and possibly get an upset here, man. I know he's got to worry about those big bombs from Hunter Azure, but I feel like they're a little telegraphed, man. I feel like it's kind of similar to the Johns fight, pretty much. I mean, let's see if he can, actually get the nod this time. I think there's value on him, so I'm gonna take him for the win.
Man, this is an interesting fight for a lot of reasons because Cole Smith, obviously, he's very unique in the sense that he's very, very tall for the weight class, and it's almost like a poor man's version of like Chiesa for 135. If he takes your back, he's either going to choke you out or that round is over. You're not escaping his body triangle. So a lot of people are talking about how Hunter Azure is coming off this brutal knockout loss. I mean, I don't even factor that into my analysis because I'm not worried about Cole Smith's stand-up. I'm worried about him backpacking Hunter Azure and winning 2 of the rounds. But on the feet, I actually think it's Cole Smith that's very sketchy. I think that he got wobbled by Mitch Gagnon in his debut. I think he got dropped by a jab against Miles Johns. But Hunter Azure, man, he's very overrated, like you said. But, man, I think he throws with more volume. It just comes down to the scrambles here. If he can avoid getting backpacked, I think he comes out here and wins this fight. Does he avoid the backpack? I don't know. That's really what it comes down to. I know Katona even took his back. But, I mean, Katona's a guy that choked out Bryce Mitchell. So, it's a tough one. I lean with Azure. We'll see what happens. Now, next up in the heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Marcos Rogerio de Lima Peizao. He's 17-6, and Alexander Romanov is 11-0. Currently, they got Alexander Romanov minus 130. The comeback on Marcos Rogerio de Lima Peizao is plus 110. So, it's easy to look at Romanov's regional footage and say stuff like, oh, he's tapping these guys out with forearm chokes. Like, that shit ain't going to work in the UFC. The thing is that Marcos Rogerio de Lima has a reputation of tapping out to things that aren't locked in. Just look at the Krylov fight. Look at, there's a couple. It was the Antigulov fight. It was like, yo, Marcos, you know what I mean? So, look, Marcos hits like a truck, and on the feet, if Romanov decides he wants to test his stand-up on Saturday night, there's a good chance he hits the deck. But, I mean, this guy's a Moldovan wrestler. I think he's going to come out here, mix into the takedowns, and I think he only needs one takedown to finish this fight. So, I think he's going to come out here, pick up Marcos Rogerio de Lima Peizao, slam him on the mat, and then choke him out with some stuff that doesn't even look like it's locked in. So, or ground and pound him. I'm going Alexander Romanov to get his first UFC win.
Yeah, this is an interesting fight. I know Peizao, he looked good his last fight against Sasali, and the issue with him, man, has always been like you said, the submissions and these quit jobs that he's done, like Struve and Krylov, OSP, and Antigulov, and these guys. So yeah, man, that's when you're betting Peizao, it's kind of hard to trust him because that's a possibility, man. If they go to the ground, but man, Romanov, to be honest, I really wasn't impressed at all. I think he's really sloppy on the feet. I think he leads in with kicks with his hands down, and I think there's a good chance that he gets knocked out early, man. And I see Peizao de Lima opened up the favorite. I'm actually thinking Peizao comes out here and gets that early stoppage, man. I feel like Romanov's, he's not a Russian. I think like he's got this reputation, and I get it. Peizao de Lima has had his mishaps on the mat, but hey, man, who better to get subbed by than OSP, who's got like a shit ton of submissions. You got Krylov's got a shit ton of subs. Struve's got a shit ton of subs. So
Antigolov's got a shit ton of subs.
All these guys that he's lost to have and Romanov, man. And when I looked at some of the opponents that he was fighting, yeah, they had good records on paper, but man, when you dig into those records, man, his scene was kind of sketch, man. Those dudes look like 205ers. I wasn't sold on Romanov at all, man. I'm actually going to go with Peizao de Lima by first round KO.
Next up in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Montanna de la Rosa, she's 11-5, and Viviane Araujo is 8-2. Damn, she's only 8-2. I thought she was more experienced than that. Currently, they got Viviane Araujo minus 175. The comeback on Montanna De La Rosa is plus 155. This is another interesting fight because, Viviane Araujo got called up to the UFC on short notice. She goes out there against Talita Bernardo, and she doesn't just win the fight, Shaq. She knocks her out. One-punch knockout, and you don't often see that in the women's division. So right away, she stood out. And then the next fight against Alexis Davis, she basically dominated the entire fight. I know she gave up one little position there in the second round, but ended up winning the fight anyways. And then the Jessica I fight, she wasn't ready for the person that was ranked number 1 in the world at the time. It is what it is, right? Here against Montanna De La Rosa, I feel like Montana's been making a lot of improvements. She's been flying under the radar, and if she takes your back, she's very, very dominant from that position. And I heard that she actually did this camp in elevation, so I expect her cardio to be on point, which is important because Vivi is known for gassing that second half of the fight. But man, I feel like Vivi has more intensity. She's more violent. She's actually more well-rounded. She hits harder. And I feel like if she doesn't get choked out, if she doesn't give up her back, I think she's going to come out here and win this fight. So I'm going to lean with Viviane Araujo to get it done.
Yeah, I think Viviane just got, it was just too much too soon, I guess, against this guy who, say what you want. She is she beat Chukagian, you know what I'm saying? So she is somewhat proven a chick in that weight class. And Viviane, do I think she was as good as going, into that fight, and more so, it was kind of Jessica I missed weight by 5 pounds. So you're kind of thinking Viviane could come in here and slide and get this win, but, it wasn't able to go her way. But yeah, man, the cardio is definitely a concern. She gassed in that Alexis Davis fight. It was just Alexis Davis is a stationary punching bag, and she was able to stay upright enough and get the decision win. Montanna De La Rosa, I feel like she's still not that comfortable on the feet. Yeah, she's making improvement. She is big, and I do like her in some of those clinch wrestling type of spots. She is a good wrestler, man. So maybe she can wear on Viviane and get her tired. But I feel like Viviane, at least in the early goings, is a lot faster, way better footwork, hits harder. I feel like she can overwhelm Montanna early on with the footwork. It's just Viviane's a little chinny herself. She suffered a KO loss on the local scene as well, and I've seen her get dropped in another fight as well. So that is slightly a concern of hers as well. But I feel like she's the more athletic, like you said, more intense, and I feel like she'll get the win.
Now, next up in the middleweight division, this is going to be a hell of a fight because they're going to get right down to business. We got a matchup between Bartosz the Butcher Fabinski. He's 15-3, and Andre Muniz is 19-4. Currently, they got Bartosz Fabinski minus 160. The comeback on Andre Muniz is plus 140. Well, Shaq, this is how this fight's going to go down. Bartosz Fabinski is going to charge right at Andre Muniz the second the bell rings. And do you know what Darren Stewart and Emil Meek have in common? In the negative side, not the positive side. The positive side is they're exciting bangers. Do you know what the negative they have in common is, Shaq? They can't wrestle to save their fucking lives, and they don't have black belts in jiu-jitsu. You know what Andre Muniz has? He has a serious black belt. I know there's black belts and then there's black belts, but Andre Muniz is a real, legitimate black belt. And Bartosz Fabinski is going to give Andre Muniz every single opportunity in the world to submit him. Now, it's also a case where you can make the opposite argument and say, well, Andre Muniz has no problem going to his back, so he's going to give Bartosz every chance to grind this one out too. And I understand that. It's just a case where it's like Andre Muniz off his back is attacking the entire time to a point where I don't think Bartosz can just settle in position and just lay on him. I feel like he's going to be defending arm bars and triangles the entire time. Real arm bars and triangles, not throw one up and then quit. I'm talking real arm bars and triangles. His guillotine's on point. And also, I would say Muniz is better standing. Muniz, I know he's a jiu-jitsu guy, but he throws heavy, man. He throws with some heat. He's dropped some people before. And I wouldn't actually be surprised if Muniz took Bartosz down. Muniz has some good offensive takedowns too. So I think Bartosz only has one path to victory, which is to hope to God he can not get submitted here and then, lay on a very gassed out fighter. But if that doesn't happen, he's getting submitted, he's getting knocked out, he's losing a decision. I'm going to go with the first round submission. I got Andre Muniz for the upset.
Yeah, look, Bartosz is going to take Andre Muniz down right away. We already know this. So, look, we know, like you said, it's pretty cut and dry. Bartosz is gonna come out here and take us down. And if I'm not mistaken, Andre Muniz ain't just a black belt. I think he might actually be a 3rd-degree black belt, if I'm not mistaken. So this is an expert. And when you look at his fight against Taylor Johnson on the Contender Series, it was kind of same. Taylor Johnson, big undefeated wrestler, came out, dumped him right away, and Andre was threatening him with arm bars and triangles, and eventually took that back. And when he got on top of Taylor Johnson, the fight was over shortly after. So, man, I could definitely see. So I feel like Muniz is the better overall guy, and man, this guy's impressed me, man. I feel like his jiu-jitsu, man, the way he what's his name? The Brazilian he fought,
Arroyo.
Yeah, Antonio Arroyo. Yeah. Antonio Arroyo, whenever he got on top of Muniz, he would think that he was safe and he'd be looking to rest, and then all of a sudden now he's getting swept, and it was. I'm not saying but let's just say he kind of has similar to some flyweight transitions on the ground, man. He's all over the place with the submission attempts, man. So I agree, man. I think he can at least make Bartosz stand up a couple times or really put fear. But yeah, man, look. If Bartosz wins, it's not going to shock us, but man, I feel like he's going to really have to work. Darren Stewart doesn't have the threatening game. Emil Meck doesn't have that threatening game. Hector Urbina doesn't have that threatening game. And let's not forget the last time he fought a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, he got knocked out in the very first round. So I'm going to go with Andre Muniz.
And let me just bust a quick myth real quick, because everyone keeps talking about, this split decision that Muniz had with Arroyo. Guys, all 3 judges scored that fight 30-27. What split decision? So let's just go ahead and debunk those rumors real quick, because that fight was no split. That wasn't a back and forth fight. That was, the guy is so dominant he can win a fight off his back. That's how good his jiu-jitsu is. So I can't wait for this fight. Now, next up, in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Thiago Moises, he's 13-4, and Jalin Turner is 9-5. Currently, they got Thiago Moises -160. The comeback on Jalin Turner is +140. Listen, I had some choice words for Thiago Moises in the last breakdown. Before that fight with Michael Johnson, I said, I hate to talk like this, but I don't think that he belongs in the UFC. And even though he officially won that fight, I feel like that kind of win, that kind of finish is something that'll only happen to Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson beat Reza Madadi's ass and then got submitted. Michael Johnson beat Darren Elkin's ass and then got submitted. Michael Johnson beat Thiago Moises' ass and then got submitted. So, I mean, it's like, how many times is that kind of shit going to happen? You know what I'm saying, Shaq? I think that was... I mean, if it was a fluke, okay? It was a fluke. It is what it is, and the strike count was 26-1. And not only that, you consider that a win, then you look at his losses in the UFC against Beneil and Demir, and it's like, I understand Beneil and Demir are top 15 guys. I completely get that. But, Thiago didn't even show anything in those fights. Thiago just looks like he doesn't belong. And then the one fight that he actually won in the UFC, the Kurt Holloway fight, Shaq, me and you know the deal with Kurt Holloway, why he doesn't win any UFC fights. I mean, it's no secret why his fight against Matt Bessette, which he officially won by first-round knockout, is a no contest, because Kurt Holloway needs an IV, and everybody knows that they banned the IVs. So after he knocked out Matt Bessette in the first round, they overturn it, and he looked amazing in that fight, by the way. Then he comes to the UFC, can't win a single fight because he can't use the IVs anymore. So, Thiago Moises barely got past a no IV Kurt Holloway, and that's his one real UFC win. I mean, the Michael Johnson one, come on, guys. Now with Jalin Turner, he's actually a guy that I was very low on, and he's been proving me wrong. He's been making improvements, and I feel like he's got a lot of potential, because if you watch some of his regional fights, I mean, he was taking unnecessary punches from a lot of these guys. He was getting knocked out by nobodies. It was almost like, hey, he's 6'3", he's got the 77-inch reach, but, maybe he just ain't that guy. But, I feel like he might be that guy. He's just young, man, and I feel like he's been improving every single fight. Look, UFC debut, he goes in there with Vicente Luque, which is I love his manager, but and maybe they just needed any opportunity for him to get in the big show, but it's like, why are you fighting Vicente Luque in your UFC debut? But anyways, after such a vicious knockout, we already assume, hey, he'll never be the same. But he goes in there with Callan Potter, and before everyone laughs, because, I mentioned Callan Potter, hey, all of Callan Potter's fights, he had moments in, except the Jalin Turner fight. The Maki Pitola fight was this back and forth fight. The Keenan Song fight, the first minute of the fight, Callan Potter full mounts Keenan Song, and then eventually he gets knocked out. Against Jalin Turner, he didn't do shit. He got mopped against Jalin Turner. And then the next fight against Matt Frivola, which we were at in Atlanta, Georgia. Look, Matt Frivola is a serious wrestler. He's actually got a real wrestling background, something Moises doesn't have. And more importantly, he chains his takedowns together, which Moises doesn't do. Moises shoots from a mile away, and if he doesn't get the first, he's not going to shoot again for a while. And I felt like Jalin Turner, there were a couple things I didn't like, going for the guillotine instead of the underhooks, but I felt like he showed a relatively decent get-up game. He's not some fish out of water off his back either, and I feel like he's decently well-rounded. He's improving. And then that next fight against Culibao, he treated that guy like he didn't belong at all. And those are the kind of performances I need to see that are proof that he's been improving. And I think here against Thiago Moises, he's going to light this guy up. He's going to stuff the takedowns, use that 7-inch reach advantage, and maybe knock him out, maybe win a decision. But this stuff with Moises, looking like he doesn't belong, this is nothing new, Shaq. I mean, I know you remember that Robert Watley fight or that Jason Knight fight on the regional scene. This has been going on for years. So I got Jalin Turner for the upset.
Yeah, man, this is one of the fights I'm, looking the most forward to. You made some good points there, but I feel like Jalin Turner, he's got a lot of athletic, 6'3", long southpaw, all that good offensive striking. Moises backs up a lot. So, I definitely think from the betting side of things, there's some value. Moises, definitely not that high on him, but at the same time, man, in both of these guys, man, they were both young in some of these spots. And, I feel like they just couldn't lose the potential. So on the flip side, Jalin Turner, that Frivola fight, the things that worry me is like, Frivola's been swimming with these 6'3" guys. He's actually about to fight another one here soon. But, I think that it kind of worries me how easily Frivola was able to get his arms around Jalen's neck, and how every time he shot in on the single, I mean, he pretty much got it. But yeah, Jalin Turner, I don't think he's going to get, it takes one time for him to get submitted. I think he can fend off some submissions. It's just that you got to respect Moises' submission ability. I mean, he submitted Emmers on the local scene. He submitted some guys out there on the local scene. And if Jalin Turner kind of occasionally will make these, what I didn't like in the Frivola fight was how he wasn't pulling the trigger when he was backing him up, man. I felt like he could have been throwing a lot more. I felt like, he was letting Frivola even catch him with some overhand rights. And I feel like it's kind of a common theme. And, you want to talk about Thiago and Moises' wins, being, flukes. I feel like Jalin Turner's wins really, I think they were nice, but Josh Culibao, let's just be honest here, is a 45er, and he's about to lose his second fight here again. He's fighting Air Jordan. Josh Culibao ain't UFC caliber, in my opinion, and neither is Callan Potter. So, I feel like Jalin Turner still has something to prove. I feel like it's a 50-50 fight, man. I would not be shocked if Moises, not saying that he's going to knock him out, but I feel like even though he got absolutely embarrassed against Ismagulov, I feel like he landed a couple overhand rights. Like, he actually kind of hurt Ismagulov at one point. I mean, look, if you put Ismagulov in there with Jalin Turner, the fight's going to be over really, really fast. Like, Jalin Turner, yeah, he's gotten to a couple nice wins, but the Matt Frivola fight, he did not pull the trigger when he walked Frivola down, and he got taken down a bunch of times and gave up his back a bunch of times. So I actually think Moises is the rightful favorite, and he actually opened up like an over 2-1 favorite. Like, I see why you would take Turner. He's got some good physical advantages, but man, something in my gut tells me like, man, he's still a little shaky, man. I'm not 100% sure that. And I heard he was also 193 pounds at the beginning of quarantine. So I know he's having a big weight drop, but I'm actually gonna go with Moises, man. I think he submits him. I'm gonna say first round.
Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Brian Kelleher, he's 21-11, and Kevin Natividad is 9-1. Currently, they got Brian Kelleher minus 230. The comeback on Kevin Natividad is plus 190. Shaq, Kelleher is one of these guys that he's great as an underdog. I mean, as an underdog against Yuri, against he had a couple other upsets. O'Day Osborne, even against Azure, he goes out there, and when you count this guy out, he'll win. But when you rely on him as a big favorite, I've seen him upset more than once. So what do you think, man? You think this newcomer could come out here and get the dub?
Yeah, I think Kelleher's too experienced for this guy. I mean, this guy, he's a decent striker, decent everywhere. I just think Kelleher, man, you put him in here with these young, like Azures and O'Day Osborns, these debutant level guys, then that's where you see Kelleher start to really start to put a beating on dudes, man. I think Kelleher's just a tough journey, man. But trust me, if you saw what happened with O'Day Osborne, he was tapping the mat with his foot. But if you put Kelleher in there with Cody Stamen and what was supposed to be his fight, Ricky Simon, yeah, he's gonna lose those, But and Montel Jackson, he'll lose those. But you put him in there with Cheeto Veras and shit like that. But you put him in there with Hunter Azure and O'Day Osborne and Kevin Natividad. I actually got Brian Kelleher by a guillotine finish this weekend.
Man, I like this kid, Kevin Natividad, man. He comes to bang. He's very, very exciting. He'll stand and trade the entire time. He does get hit a lot, but he also hits you a lot. He walks forward the entire time, and usually, he gets knockout wins. So if Brian Kelleher, took his foot off the gas because Ricky Simon pulled out the fight, if Brian Kelleher thinks this is a joke, if he underestimates this guy, this is a spot where he could get upset. So I would not be surprised to see Kevin Natividad even come out here and knock out a guy like Kelleher. I think he throws with that kind of power. I think he's ready for the UFC right now. I don't think this is some random newcomer. But that being said, I do have to side with the experience of Kelleher, so I'm going to pick him here. But I actually do kind of think it's a dog or pass situation. I do not trust Kelleher at the chalk price. Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Michel Demolidor Pereira. He's 23-11, and Zelim Bors Imadaev is 8-2. Currently, they got Michel Pereira -115 and Zelim Imadaev -105. So, Shaq, we were at Imadaev's UFC debut, and considering his regional experience, where he knocked out all these guys that a bunch of guys with losing records and this and that. He actually got to go 3 rounds with Max Griffin. And I know Max Griffin has a losing record, but Max Griffin usually just loses tough decisions to really tough guys, like to Zaleski, to Alex Cowboy. Max Griffin is a tough fight despite his record, is what I'm trying to say. So it goes to that majority decision. Then he has the fight with Hot Chocolate. And I know officially it says that he was knocked out in the second round. And boy, was he knocked out in the second round. But I felt like up until that point, he was kind of winning the fight. And I felt like he looked a lot better in the Danny Roberts fight than he did in the Max Griffin fight. So do you think he can kind of, improve even more and come out here and beat, the very unpredictable Pereira?
This is an interesting fight, man, because I've been saying for a while, man, I don't feel like Imadaev's UFC caliber. He beat nobody on his local scene, and just the things you hear about him that he likes to beat up his training partners, and just like even both of them really both of these guys are liabilities to lose points, especially Imadaev. Like Imadaev grabs the fence like so many times throughout his fights, and you bring it. I like how you brought up this Max Griffin fight, man. I feel like he got too much steam from that fight. When I actually picked Hot Chocolate in the second fight by knockout, I wish I would have bet it. I think it was like plus 180, but I feel like he got too much steam from that Max Griffin fight. Max Griffin, I know he's had some, tough fights with he beat Perry, Elizu, and this and Curtis Melinder, whatever this and that. But I feel like Max Griffin, man, is on his way out. As a matter of fact, Max Griffin's next fight, I think he fought Alex Morano, and I bet on Alex Morano because I was like, dude, I'm telling you, bro, Max Griffin, I think he's like 3-6 in the UFC, and I forget, he's actually got a fight. I forget who he is fighting, but I feel like Max Griffin, honestly, in a couple months will no longer be a UFC fighter. I feel like he's a tough guy, but I feel like Imadaev got too much steam from that fight. Max Griffin had no offense striking in that fight. Imadaev was able to just walk forward and throw, and he still couldn't get the weathered old journeyman out of there, man. And then you go into the fight where you actually fight someone that's going to throw back on him, and he got countered and he got knocked out. Well, I will say Imadaev, the advantage he has in this fight with Pereira is he does press, he does push forward, and he probably does have better cardio. It's just that he fights with his hands down. The guy is super chinny, and like even when he does get these takedowns, the guys pop right back up on him. But he does press. I will give him that. Does move forward. But I just feel like if somebody has any type of offense coming back on him, this guy can be countered and be put to sleep, man. I feel like there's so many openings. And Hot Chocolate, Bambi legs. I love Hot Chocolate, but Hot Chocolate's got Bambi legs, and he slept them. And I feel like when Michel Pereira, yeah, he does a lot of dumb shit, and he uses a lot of energy, and he cuts a shit ton of weight. But I feel like, man, this guy should be 2-1 in the UFC. I just watched his fight with Diego. Diego worked the system. Props to him. Get your extra six figures. I know you got a family to feed, but Michel Pereira dominated that fight from start to finish. He was on the verge of finishing him. I honestly feel like he got screwed out of a win there. I feel like, he made a mistake. Diego was squirming around against the fence, and he accidentally was down. There was no fouls committed prior to that, and I feel like he should have got the win. And I feel like he's just capable more than Zelim Imadaev. The only advantage I see Imadaev having is he pushes and he will press. But when they get out in space and Imadaev, and I'm interested to see if he's gonna push, because he just got knocked out. And I'm like, man, if he backs up in this fight, he has no technique to stand toe to toe with Michel Pereira. And I feel like Michel Pereira, off these 2 losses, last fight on his contract, is going to come out here a little more serious than usual and get the win. So I actually think he's going to put Imadaev down somewhat early, man. I feel like Imadaev's a tough guy, but he doesn't have the technique. I feel like he doesn't have the jiu-jitsu to hold anyone down. I feel like he got too much steam in that Max Griffin fight, and then, he got knocked out his next fight. So I'm going to go with Michel Pereira, barring he doesn't do anything stupid.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's one of these cases where, people talk about how, they're finally throwing Michel Pereira a bone. They're finally giving him a gimme fight. It's like, guys, Tristan Connolly is a gimme fight. Diego Sanchez in 2020 is a gimme fight. So I kind of think Zelim Imadaev is better than those guys. And I feel like Zelim Imadaev, it's a case where, look, he's 25 years old. He fought absolutely nobody on his regional scene, comes to the UFC, fights Max Griffin. And even though, Max Griffin is 3-6, I mean, every fight he loses goes to decision. So for the most part, right? He hasn't been finished in the UFC, I don't think. So every single fight's been a tough fight. Then the next one against Hot Chocolate, I did see improvements. It's just, the result was that he got knocked out. But like up until the knockout, I saw 9 minutes of improvement. So I actually think that he's got better hands than Michel Pereira. It's just a thing where, like, Pereira, he's got this very stabbing front kick. He's got a beautiful flying knee. He's so goddamn athletic, but like, you cannot trust this guy to do what you want him to do. So I kind of feel like Zelim's going to walk him down and probably knock him out in the first round, kind of like Dusko did, Todorovic. I know that was at 85s, but I do like Zelim's forward pressure, and his hands aren't bad either. It's just a matter of developing even more because, again, he's just a kid, never fought anybody on the regional scene. His last 2 fights are the only real people he's ever fought. So that's all he's got to build off of, really. But, again, when people talk about throw this kid a bone, like, his last 2 fucking fights were bones, and he lost to both of them. And I agree with you. I thought that the Diego Sanchez fight in that finishing sequence, I felt like they could have kind of gave Michel a break there. I felt like he was kind of throwing the knee as Diego was going down. I didn't think it was that bad. Like, live, I was like, oh my God, what a fucking idiot. But when I rewatched it yesterday, I actually didn't think it was that bad. But even prior to that, the fact that we got to that point in the 3rd round really scares me, because it's like, dude, you're supposed to finish Diego in the first round in 2020. You're supposed to go out there and highlight reel this guy. And I didn't like some of the stuff I was seeing. A lot of inactivity. He tried to, too many backflips in the Connolly fight and too little backflips in the Diego fight, right? So I don't know. It's a tough one to call. I'm going to go with Zelim Imadaev by first round knockout. Now, not co-main event. Featured bout, we got Sajara Eubanks. She's 5-4, and Karol Rosa is 13-3. Currently, they got Karol Rosa -130. The comeback on Sajara Eubanks is +110. I mean, I know their records say one's 13-3, one's 5-4, but it's a little bit misleading. Sajara Eubanks is a lot better than her record states. I mean, she's got wins over Lauren Murphy, who is a top 5 fighter in her division. She's got head kick knockouts on The Ultimate Fighter. She's got a black belt under Lloyd Irvin. So Sajara Eubanks is no slouch at all. But Karol Rosa, if you're a DraftKings player, you know exactly who Karol Rosa is because she's going out there scoring 100-plus points both of her fights. I mean, she's landed 170 significant strikes in her fight against Procopio, and everyone thinks it was this fluke, like, oh, they don't know how to count the numbers. And then she goes out there the next fight and lands over 100 significant strikes there, too. So this girl is an output machine. It's just this is a step up in competition, Shaq. So you think she can come out here and have that same big output against someone like Sarge?
Yeah, it's definitely a step up from Vanessa Mello and Procopio, and Sajara Eubanks. She's lost 2 out of her last 3, or so I feel like Sajara Eubanks. She's good everywhere, good boxing, black belt on the mat. That's an aspect you got to be. I'm interested to see if she's able to take down Karol Rosa. Man, but I actually like Karol Rosa a lot, man. I feel like she's very talented. I feel like she throws the volume on the strikes, and what I really like is the calf kick that she's got, man. She attacks that low kick pretty much after every single combination, man. And Sajara Eubanks, man, at one point I was actually somewhat high on her, but this is my issue with Sajara Eubanks. I feel like, man, she is somewhat of a front runner. I feel like when you look at her wins, they all have one common theme: they're dominant. But anytime there's like a little bit of pushback, and at least especially since she's moved back up to 135, I feel like she was a little bit of a weight bully at 125, man. I feel like she was able to just physically dominate girls and hold them down, and have these wins over. And I feel like Lauren Murphy is a completely different fighter now. Roxanne Modafferi, I mean, big whoop. And I just feel like Sajara Eubanks, when fights get tough, especially in that Betch Correa fight, who's like that should have been your fight right there. I know it was in Mexico Elevation, but Betch is slow, hittable. I mean, you dominated the first round and then you completely shut down. And I feel like Sajara is a very emotional person, a very emotional fighter. And I feel like in that fight, she got carried away with the twerking and all this stuff they were doing in the middle of the cage. And I feel like, man, she's a little bit mental. I feel like when the going gets tough, she kind of slows down and she kind of breaks. Now, Karol Rosa, she has been submitted more than one time back in the local scene, so it is somewhat of a worry. I just feel like if this fight stays standing, Karol Rosa is going to land more strikes. I feel like she's going to mix it up a little bit better. And I feel like, her gym, her and Draj, Priscilla, they got heart, man. They come to bang, and I feel like when the going gets tough, they're going to be a little tougher. So I'm actually going to go with Karol Rosa to get this unanimous decision.
So real quick, 2 pieces of MMA news for you. Ray Borg just announced that he's coming out of retirement after announcing his retirement last week, and Mike Rodriguez is fighting Ed Herman next week. So just wanted to throw that out there. But anyways, back to this matchup, Sajara Eubanks versus Karol Rosa. It's definitely a step up in competition for Karol Rosa. Eubanks, she's got the black belt under Lloyd Irvin. She's been in there with a lot of tough people. She was actually supposed to fight for a UFC title at one point. She might have even been a UFC champion if she got in there with Nico Montano. You know what I'm saying, Shaq? So she missed out on that opportunity. But man, Karol Rosa, that output is absolutely unbelievable, So to me, it's really not even about how they match up. To me, it's about, hey, it's a week short notice. After that win against Melo, did she go straight to the Brazilian steakhouse, or was she back in the gym the next Monday? Has she been training? Is anybody going to miss weight tomorrow? I got a lot of questions about that, because if you give me the best version of Karol Rosa, she's not just going to win this fight, but she's going to extend her, significant strike record, go out there, score 100-plus points on DraftKings again, stuff the takedowns, do the whole bit, maybe even get some takedowns of her own, Shaq. It's just that if we're dealing with a compromised Karol Rosa, and the reason I even bring up that possible scenario, which we have no proof if she's good or not, is just because, it's a week short notice. She's a bigger girl for the weight class, traveling from Brazil. So I'm just curious, if she's 100% here. So if she is, or even if she's 90%, I think she comes out here and she beats Sarge. And Sarge is very tough. She's going to give her a real fight. I'm curious to see what happens if Sarge gets some takedowns of her own. But at the end of the day, I just see, in those moments where Sarge is trying to take a break, that's where I see Karol Rosa still, letting out that volume, that output the entire time. And I actually expected more from Sarge in that last fight against Sarah Moras. I know you expected more in the Betch Correa fight, and it's like, yeah, okay, Kelleher, former title challenger, been in there with a bunch of tough women. Like, okay, we'll give you a pass there. But here's Sarah Moras. Go out there and destroy her. And I know the scorecards officially say 30-27, but I was expecting a ground and pound TKO, Shaq. So, yeah, I've been kind of let down by Sarge a little bit. So I'm going to go with Karol Rosa here. I think she outvolumes her, outworks her. But let's pay attention to the scales on Friday. Co-main event of the evening in the light heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Ovince St. Preux, OSP, he's 24-14, and Alonzo Menifield is 9-1. Now, you can hear our breakdown on this, 2 weeks ago when they were originally supposed to fight. Shaq picked Alonzo Menifield, I picked OSP, but Shaq, this ain't the first time. When people talk about, well, if they fight 10 times, if they fight 100 times, it could be a different outcome every time. This is one of those times where we have to, talk like that, because a couple weeks ago, I had OSP confidently. I felt like, hey, he cut down to 205 nicely. Go ahead, take this guy down. But you're telling me now he's got to do a second weight cut, plus he had a COVID scare? That kind of makes me hesitant here. So I'm not really sure what to think anymore. Have your thoughts on the fight changed at all?
I feel like I don't want to get into, COVID talk or none of that, but, I feel like some of it could be overblown, some of it couldn't be, who knows. But, I feel like as far as the matchup goes, I feel like Menifield, he did lose to Clark, and Clark's a middle of the pack type of guy. But man, I feel like Menifield honestly kind of got 2 KOs off a dude spinning. It was kind of weird. Like both his UFC knockouts, Mamouche has no striking, so I can't put that much stock into that. I mean, if you can't knock out Mamouche, I don't know what to tell you. And then his fight with Paul Craig, I actually felt like Paul Craig was landing volume, picking him off at range. And I feel like Menifield can get very stiff. So the Clark fight, honestly, at first, going in, I was like, man, I feel like Menifield's going to kill him. But when I was watching tape, I was like, man, Menifield, you could tell if the fight progresses, he will get stiff and he will start to slow down. So, this fight with Clark, it was surprising because he actually stuffed all the takedowns, which was what I was worried about. But it was like the striking, man. He kind of just was swinging sloppy, and it was like, man, is this really the version of Menifield? Once fights get deep, man. I will say for him, luckily for him, OSP fights with his hands down, so he's gonna get a good crack at his chin. And OSP's been wobbled and hurt several times, but there's no denying OSP's seen, a side of this game that Menifield hasn't seen yet, man. And Menifield's still getting better. I think Menifield, has the higher ceiling, but OSP probably more experience, slightly better overall now. Man, I kind of want to change my pick, but man, a part of me also says, was this Devin Clark fight just a learning lesson that he needed to have? Because I also heard he wasn't running his miles after he got that $50,000 from KO and Paul Craig stiff. So that could also be a factor. So I'm actually going to stick with Menifield, but I'm going to say a close fight. I actually think it might go 3 rounds. We'll see, man. But Menifield, I mean, he's got a lot to prove, man. Because if he loses this, then that's 2 L's in a row, and then maybe he's not the prospect we all thought he was.
It's such a tough fight for me to call. I mean, the reason I even bring up that COVID shit is because, like, does that mean that he took days off from training? And you already know with a guy like Vince, we want him running his miles every single day because, he does have a tendency to slow down as well. It's not just Alonzo that has the cardio issue, and it's not a cardio issue. I mean, I guess it was a cardio issue last time because he admitted, like, even his girlfriend was giving him shit like, Zoe, like, I know you just got that 50K, but why are you skipping your runs? And I think it was like what we were talking about, man. He's at the gym. Ryan Spann already destroyed Devin Clark, so they're probably joking like, oh, you get to fight this bum. You know what I mean? So he probably thought it was this big joke. He thought he could touch anyone one time. They go unconscious. He had to realize, like, hey, this is the UFC. You got to train for every opponent. So I expect the best Alonzo Menifield. I think he's going to get better every single fight. It's just, is he ready for this right now? But I really am worried about 2 weight cuts for OSP, man. Like coming down from 240 pounds, to make that cut to 205 one time is one thing in itself. Then to do it again 2 weeks later, I feel like that could drain his gas tank in the later rounds. So it's like I'm not as confident as I was the first time, but I'm not going to switch my pick. I'm going to stick with Ovince. I think if he can get past this first round, not get knocked out, you can take this to the mat. And I know actually Alonzo has some underrated takedown defense. He stuffed most of the takedowns his last fight until the 3rd round. But even though I think on paper Devin Clark might have a better, wrestling background or credentials than Ovince, I think Ovince is better at wrestling for MMA. One guy got a title shot, one guy didn't. I think that OSP is a much better fighter than Devin Clark. It's facts. He's been, top 5, top 10 his entire career. Devin Clark barely even scratched the rankings. So this is a step up in competition for Alonzo. It's one he can pass. I'm not sure if he does. I'm going to go with Ovince. It's not going to surprise me either way. But let's tune into the scales. Let's see if either guy misses weight. I'm curious about that too. I would not be surprised to see OSP weigh in at 208. Not because he's unprofessional, but again, bro, 2 weight cuts in 2 weeks. That's a big deal. So let's see what happens. Main event of the evening in the heavyweight division. We got a matchup between Alistair Overeem. He's 46-18, and Augusto Sakai is 15-1. Currently, they got Alistair Overeem -150. The comeback on Augusto Sakai is +130. Shaq, I feel like I'm awful at calling Overeem fights, man, because it's like, he's skill-wise, he's arguably the best fighter on planet Earth, man. When he gets off on his combos, it's absolutely beautiful. He's well-rounded. He can mix in takedowns. He can do the whole bit. He's got all the experience in the world. Offensively speaking, you can't say too many bad things about him at all. It's just defensively, obviously he's been knocked out a million times, but he's also lost to guys that he's significantly better than. Like, I think that Alistair Overeem is better than Bigfoot Silva across the board. I think he's better than Travis Brown everywhere. I think his skills are far superior than, Ben Rothwell. I think he's even better than Jairzinho Rosenstrike. I think that it's just one of these things where that chin is a massive liability. And I got to give him credit to get knocked out as many times as he does, and he always gets back up on the horse and tries again. Like, that's admirable. And it's like he's not even like stuttering or slurring his words either. Like, he's an enigma, my man. Like, it's interesting to see a guy like that, because like anybody else gets knocked out 16 times and they're gonna start talking, you can barely understand a word they say, you know what I mean, Shaq? But like, this dude picks himself back up and gets back on win streaks. It's pretty fucking impressive. I give him a lot of credit for that. Augusto Sakai has been flying under the radar, man. He's a very talented Muay Thai guy. We've actually known about him for a long time, since his Bellator days. Undefeated in the UFC. He's taken the right opponents to get to this point. You think he's ready to pass the biggest test of his career?
Yeah, man, this is definitely a step up. Overeem, not only is he one of the most experienced, most decorated heavyweights, he's also one of the most richest. My boy Overeem, man, he's a mogul pretty much, man. The guy's got a following that can't be topped by a lot of guys, maybe even Stipe, man. Like, Overeem's a star, man. So this fight with Sakai, I feel like, man, a lot of people are betting on Sakai. He's new and he's a fresh face, and that is somewhat of a worry, betting wise, man. Overeem, I feel like his biggest issue is that he admires his work too much, man. I catch Overeem. There's so many times after Overeem throws where he's just hanging in the pocket with his hands down. Lately he's been getting a lot better. He plays these safe game plans, the shell against the fence, don't, 2-3 punches at a time, don't exchange too much. And, man, I still feel like you said, the chin is still a huge liability. Just look at his last fight, and let me get into his last fight. We know what Walt Harris was dealing with going into the fight. And at one point, I think everyone was like, oh, man, Walt might be easy money. No, there's no way he's going to lose this. But a big red flag for me was Walt's weight gain, in between the Alexei and the Arlovsky fights and the Overeem fight. He gained like 8 or 9 pounds, man. He usually weighs in like, 257. For the Reem fight, he came in like at the limit. So, once I saw that, I was like, man, let's see what happens, and he was able to drop Overeem early, but then the second Overeem survived, and I feel like that was due to somewhat Walt not, being in fully tip-top shape. That was at the beginning of all this. So Overeem, I feel like, man, 9 out of 10 times he would have got stopped there, but I give him credit for hanging in there and gathering himself and getting the win. I just feel like, man, if you let Augusto Sakai wobble you like that, you already saw what happened when he got my boy Tybura hurt. The fight was over very quickly, and I feel like Sakai, most of the time, the version you see of him is kind of playing a methodical Muay Thai game, trying to point fight from the outside, kind of like his last fight, kind of like the Arlovsky fight, kind of like the Chase Sherman fight up until knocked him out. But I feel like, man, like, he's got his size, can kind of walk Overeem down against. When you talk about Augusto Sakai, he's never been knocked out in MMA, and this is definitely going to be the hardest. But man, I've seen him take like full KO blows and be completely fine, man. Like, I know Arlovsky isn't the hardest hitter, but Arlovsky's a lot faster than him, and Arlovsky gives some of these guys trouble, and he caught Sakai, a couple of times, and Sakai was completely fine. I know Overeem's got more power, and I know he also knocked out Arlovsky, but I feel like Sakai's got a very underrated chin, man. I haven't really seen him, stumble, get hurt, drop, none of that, man. So, and I'm talking in his entire career. So I feel like this guy's a real methodical Muay Thai striker. I feel like he's going to come out here, get the upset win. I feel like he can stuff the takedowns. Got to be worried in that clinch. But man, his Thai background, he's solid everywhere. I wouldn't say he's the most exciting. I feel like he's gone under the radar a little bit, but I think he's going to come out here and get this upset, man. I feel like he's going to come out here and knock Alistair out. I'm going to say in the third round.
I'm really glad you brought up Walt Harris's weight, because obviously that's a huge factor. He was dealing with some stuff. He was kind of a little bit overweight for his standards that last fight. Now, the opposite of that is Augusto Sakai, because you look at his fight against Andrei Arlovsky, he actually comes in there 266, but then the very next fight against Marcin Tybura comes in 258. So this is actually a guy who has been working on his weight. And shout out to my boy Dan Tom. He actually told me that Augusto Sakai used to be like a competitive runner. So, he's no stranger to deep waters in terms of, the cardiovascular and all that stuff. The guy can run miles, Shaq, and I actually didn't know that. So that probably makes me think that, when he's out of camp, the guy probably weighs like 300 pounds. You know what I'm saying, Shaq? So Augusto Sakai is a big boy. And obviously I like his Muay Thai technique a lot. I think we've been higher on him than most. I think a lot of people are down on him because the fights can seem kind of slow paced. But if you actually look at the numbers, he's got a very high output, man. And his defense is on point. I like the calf kicks, the knees, just all the Muay Thai techniques. And I think it's a case where Alistair Overeem can knock anyone out, but I think if Alistair Overeem wants to secure a win, he needs to take Augusto Sakai down and smash him. And Augusto Sakai, we're not exactly quite sure what happens when he's on the mat. I know in Bellator he lost that fight where he got wrestled against Czech, and I know against Ivanov he grabbed the fence, which, hey, beautiful job. Like, if the ref... It's ref's discretion, so if the ref doesn't take a point, good job. You usually can get away with one until they take a point. Depends where you are. If you're here in Atlanta with George Allen, he'll take a point right away. He won't even give you a warning. But whoever was reffing that night gave him the warning. So beautiful job. Just do whatever you can to get a W. That's what this is all about. So I'm curious to see what happens with this wrestling defense, because I know that Overeem has been training in elevation in Denver with Curtis Blades. I know that they've been working extensively on his wrestling. And that's another thing I respect about Overeem. His ego isn't so big to where, after he loses to a guy, he can't go train with the guy. After he lost to Blades, he goes out to Colorado and trains with him. So I really respect that quality in Overeem. But here, man, I feel like if he can't get this to the mat and smash him, he does have a knockout chance, but the durability of Sakai is really on point. I feel like Sakai is going to be the one that probably knocks him out. He's got 25 minutes to do so. So... yeah, somewhere along the way, I do think he catches Overeem, but up until that point, I think they kind of have like a little bit of a chess match on the feet. Well, Shaq, now we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So what is the fight to watch for UFC on ESPN Plus 34?
I got to go with Zelim Imadaev versus Michel Pereira, man. You got both guys hungry. Last fight on this is it. This is a loser goes home fight. This is stamped, both guys last fight on the contract. So, losers going home. Both guys are hungry. We know what the type of excitement Pereira brings. We know Imadaev will push forward. He likes to press. So I think both these guys are going to get in the middle. And, I do see someone getting finished. So that is my fight to watch.
Yeah, definitely one of the fights to watch. For me, my fight to watch is Andre Muniz versus Bartosz Fabinski, because, listen, we don't know who's going to win the fight and we don't know the outcome, but what we do know is that they are going to clash as soon as the bell rings. Bartosz is going to go right after Muniz, and Muniz has that beautiful jiu-jitsu in his back pocket. He's going to look to use that right away. basically what I'm trying to say is this is going to be a fight the second the bell rings. There's not going to be a feel-out process. They're not going to be circling around staring at each other. The ref's going to say go, and these two are going to get into a fight. So for that reason, Andre Muniz versus Bartosz Fabinski is my fight to watch. Well, Shaq, who is your fighter to watch for UFC Vegas 9?
My fighter to watch is in the main event, Augusto Sakai, man. He's got an opportunity to get a serious name under his belt. He's already got, guys like Andrei Arlovski and Blagoy Ivanov on his resume. Now it's time to go out there and get Alistair Overeem, because you know what happens when you beat Overeem. If you beat Overeem, I mean, that means you're a fight away from the title. So, if Augusto Sakai gets this win, you can expect him to see him in there against Rosenstrike or, one of these guys, man. So I feel like this is the biggest fight of his career. He's made it a long way from it back in his Bellator days. And, if he were to win this main event, he'd be the first one from Contender Series to win the main event. I know Edmund fell short. Shout out to Brunson. That was a hell of a performance. I know people are saying Edmund pulled a stunt there, but it was just experience, man. Let's see if the experience is a factor for Overeem.
Yeah, and what's different about a guy like Sakai than a guy like Edmund Shabazian is most of Edmund Shabazian's wins were first-round finishes, whereas Sakai's experience going to those deep waters. He knows what it's like to go 3 rounds multiple times and be in bad spots and do the whole bit. So I think he's a little bit more seasoned than Edmund Shabazian. Now it's about, is he ready to fight a guy on this level in Alistair Overeem? So that's what remains to be seen. For me, my fighter to watch is Jalin Turner. Look, this is a guy who we've actually criticized heavily, but now I feel like he's starting to make some improvements, and I want to see how he does with Thiago Moises, because this fight's going to let me know a lot about if he's truly been improving or not. Because it's like, it's one thing to lose to Moises. Like, let's say he's lighting Moises up and then he gets caught in a sub. Okay, that's one thing. But like, if Moises dominates him, then that's a big red flag on Jalen's part. But on the other side, if Jalin comes out here, lights up Moises like he's supposed to, possibly gets a knockout or a dominant decision win, I feel like that's a huge step in the right direction. So I want to know exactly what Jalin Turner does with this opportunity, because there's a certain way you're supposed to handle Thiago Moises. I'm curious to see if he does it. For that reason, he is my fighter to watch. Well, Shaq, we did it. It's going down this Saturday night in Las Vegas, Nevada. Overeem versus Sakai. They can follow you at MMA Genius 05. They can follow me at Best Fight Picks. On Instagram at Best Fight Picks Official. On Instagram, Shaq BFP. Subscribe to Half the Battle on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, all the places where we are available. Shout out to everyone that joined us on that live stream last week. That was a lot of fun. We look forward to doing more of those soon. Make sure you check us out at bestfightpicks.com. We appreciate all the support. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.